Hi, I'm Tom Zimmerman. Welcome to the EMDR podcast. Um, my friends and family who know me well know that I'm not easily astonished. It takes a lot to impress me. And it is true that sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to get my mind around something and to see it clearly and really to see it for what it is. And this podcast is, I guess on the top line, it's about Flash. But what I want to talk about and think about are Flash-like approaches. And I want to address some of the misconceptions that I had about Flash going in and Flash-like approaches. And I want to encourage us to rethink what we thought we knew about these approaches, because I really do believe that they can transform how we treat mental health issues globally in the 21st century. This is something I am incredibly excited about. I am seeing my clients do astonishingly well with these approaches. And almost everything I now know about Flash-like approaches is exactly opposite what I thought I knew before I took the training and before I took a close look at it. So thank you for going with me on this journey. Be patient. I'm gonna try to explain things as best I can and in the most sensible ways that I can. Be patient. This is amazing. And that is from someone who is not easily astonished. So, so my original motivation for learning more about Flash was I was doing a ton of I was providing a lot of consultation to therapists who were asking me about it. And I couldn't really respond other than the information that I read several years ago, which was that Flash was a resource, that Flash was a way to take some heat out of difficult memories. And so I took the training. I took the training with Ricky Greenwald's Child Trauma Institute, and it was really, really interesting. And I learned as a course of the little practicums that we did there, I learned that for some reason, the memories that I worked on in that practicum really did resolve. And they resolved by every single metric that I would have considered a memory being resolved inside EMDR. So even in that first practicum, which was just a very basic, very light introduction to it, I worked on memories that I was planning on spending a whole hour, an hour session in EMDR, and I cleared them back to back very, very rapidly, very, very painlessly, and they remain cleared. So that was an interesting little data point. I'm like, wow, this is kind of interesting. But even at the end of it, I thought, hey, this may be this may be a way to take a lot of heat out of memories. And I kid you not, when I started doing this with my clients, I had to do 80 of these, 80 memories in a row in which the SUDS went to a 0 before I realized this is not a resource. Flash-like approaches are not a resource. Resources do not profoundly transform where and how a memory is stored in the brain, and resources do not, on their face, move a memory from the hot limbic brain into absolutely normal memory. I had to see this dozens and dozens and dozens of times with my clients to really deeply, viscerally start to believe it. And that's where I am now. So let's talk a little bit about what the heck all do I mean by Flash-like approaches. And it is a little bit confusing because the way Flash was first developed, it was developed by an EMDR therapist who was looking for what's the minimum amount of distress that we need to activate when loading a memory. Kind of stumbled across Flash. And it's been revised, it's been updated. So what Flash is now isn't what Flash was a few years ago. And where I got trained, isn't the Flash, this isn't the same script, isn't the same version you would get if you trained with Phil Manfield, who developed it. So what I want to describe is what I mean when I say a flash-like approach, because I don't think there is one flash. And that's something that's a little bit confusing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I want to describe a little bit about how I conceptualize it, how I do it with, with my clients, and then what that might mean, right? What that might mean for working with really, really, really complex clients. If you only see healthy people, please, you can stop here. You have every single thing you need in your EMDR toolkit. There's nothing that this little talk of mine is going to be able to help you with. However, if you are a little bit frustrated and your clients are a little bit frustrated that someone comes to see you and it's almost like they have an infection that has them completely destabilized. They come to you in crisis and they're a new client, and we are nowhere near being able to process whatever that is with EMDR, because they're just going to need a pretty extensive preparation. If that's a frustration for you as a therapist, you need flash-like approaches. Your clients need flash-like approaches because they will get healthier faster. And what used to take me this long to resource a profoundly traumatized client now takes this long to resource them, because they're getting better faster, because we're treating the presenting issue as soon as the second session. So think about it from that infection point of view. We're not preparing the person to treat the infection. We're preparing them to do multiple forms of therapy from the very first contact, but we're not preparing them for the rigors of the preparation and doing very little else until they're prepared for that journey. We can treat the presenting issue as soon as the second session. So, and if you know me, if you are part of my social world in any way, you also know I'm cautious. I am very cautious. If you've done consultation with me, you know that I have many, many, many ways that you might work with trauma that might allow the client's nervous system to tolerate it more. So I am respectful, deeply respectful of the complexity of a severely traumatized nervous system. And what I'm communicating is that flash is incredibly well tolerated for the most profoundly unwell people that I've encountered. So what is flash? What are flash-like approaches? And this is my take on what that is. Other people are going to have different takes. The Phil Manfield version does not seem to have a container. The Ricky Greenwald version uses a book as a container. I like the container a lot with complex trauma, particularly severely complex trauma, and we'll see why in a moment. So the goal in flash is not to trip the amygdala. It's almost like we're going to point at a mousetrap, but we're not going to go near it. Right? We're going to point at the mousetrap, but not go near it. So we need a container that we're going to put this memory into and then push it out of awareness. So what we're doing in flash-like approaches is imagine an icon on the desktop that we're going to mouse over, and we're just going to click it once. We're not going to double click it. We're not even going to really read the subject, right? We're just going to kind of click on it one time, and then that's all we're going to do. And then maybe we'll drag it. We'll put it in another folder that may say go away. Right? We're just dragging it out of awareness, getting it off our desktop, and that's kind of what the purpose of the container is. The purpose of the container, which we put this, we're going to put whatever it is that's distressing in over and over and over is going to go in that container to get it out of awareness, because we want all of awareness for the next step. And the next step is we're going to develop a calm, relaxing scene, or we're going to have the client sit with a calm, relaxing process. The reason we do this, and it sounds like, it sounds like I'm saying, do you mean that Flash is built around 2 core EMDR resources? And somehow the way we use these resources is going to allow people to completely transform a memory which has messed with them for 40, 50 years? Yes. Yeah, that's my point. That's what I'm getting at. So, but we need a container to push stuff out of awareness. It'll be in working memory, but it will not be in direct awareness. All of our reprocessing, all of it is done in a calm, relaxing scene. The calm, relaxing scene can be the memory of a beach vacation. It can be the client playing a YouTube video of waves coming in, okay? It can be the process of a client making their favorite roast beef and cheese sandwich. The process can be, I have so many calm scenes. I have clients who have aquariums who just simply watch fish in their aquariums. I have clients who will go outside while we're doing this through telehealth. They'll go outside and they'll just notice their garden. They'll look through the windows in their kitchen, and they'll look at the trees outside. So the calm scene does not have to be imaginary. The calm scene can be a planter of flowers. It can be a vase of flowers right in front of you. It can be an object that has colors that you can kind of focus on, but it needs to be compelling. So these two resources, the container and the calm scene, okay, are really the heart of the kind of hardware, if you want, of Flash. And then while they're in this calm scene, the therapist will guide the client to do a series of blinks. And those blinks, 4 blinks is what I do. You can do 3 blinks, you can do 5 blinks. I tend to do 4 blinks. Blink, 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 blink in the calm scene visually disrupts the calm scene, and it helps move that memory in ways that we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So again, this is the process. We identify the memory, immediately container it. Okay, push it out of awareness. If you imagine a horizon, we want to push that container just beyond the edge of the horizon and get it out of direct focus. We load up the calm scene. When the client is in the calm scene, the therapist guides them to blink several times every 5 seconds for about 30 seconds. And then when we're done with that, after those guided blinks that visually disrupt the calm scene that the client is sitting with, we very quickly guide the client, very quickly, like opening a door and close it. Think about that bad memory for just a moment. Do you notice anything different about it? And whatever it is they notice that's distressing in any way, it immediately goes into the container. It gets dropped out of awareness. We go back into the calm scene. So we do this back and forth over and over. Lightly, lightly, again, we're pointing at the mousetrap. We are not playing it. We do not want this memory activated. If this memory becomes activated, if it shows up in the body, we need to use other resources. I like this very large, like an imaginary, the municipal vacuum cleaners that are in these big trucks that suck up leaves on the side of the road. We'll have the client just vacuum up any distress, see it go into that vacuum truck, and then see that truck get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's a little bitty matchbox thing that's all the way across the room. So the point in Flash is to keep the memory and the calm scene from intersecting. And if there's a lot of distress in the body, the memory and the calm scene are intersecting. So we want to container every bit of distress that might show up. And we aren't noticing anything in flash-like approaches except what's in the calm scene. Okay, so again, lightly activate, bring it into awareness, but do not activate the mousetrap of the amygdala. Push it out of your awareness, load up the calm scene, blink several times every 5 seconds for 30 seconds, and then we keep doing this back and forth, back and forth. Okay, this is very, very different than EMDR. It's metaphorically different, it's procedurally different. I've become convinced that trying to merge flash and EMDR is likely to confound both. I've reached the conclusion that flash, like EMDR, is an approach to psychotherapy. It can be its own independent approach to psychotherapy. So you don't have to think of flash entirely and completely from an EMDR lens. I think the reason we think of flash and EMDR being so related is really because of the genesis of its development and evolution, that it was developed by EMDR trainers. So let's talk about what EMDR is metaphorically and compare it a little bit with flash so that you can see how profoundly different they are. And they're both good, right? So EMDR is kind of like getting a file out of a lava hot file cabinet. Okay, we get that file, we open it up, we tear off a piece and we eat it. And in EMDR, what digesting it means is that it has to move through us, right? It moves through us, it moves through our body, and then that's how that memory gets reprocessed and put into an OK file folder. Flash, we get a file out of the lava hot file folder, file cabinet, and we do not open it. We put it on the table and we just leave it there, okay? Then we load up a calm scene, and then we visually disrupt that calm scene, which seems to kind of mix things around on the desk. And as we're doing that, as we're kind of mixing things around on the desk, completely on its own, that memory will ooch and ooch and ooch and ooch into an absolutely okay file cabinet. On its own, without having, as a matter of fact, if you want flash to not work, have a client notice stuff in their body, right? If you want flash-like approaches to get really, really complicated, activate the memory too much, right? So we're going to be very, very careful to keep that file on the desk, to do the disrupting of it in the calm scene and not when we're directly interacting with it. So this is a completely different approach. And what we also want to talk about a tiny bit is what are the prerequisites for EMDR, right? What is it at its very, very core EMDR is? EMDR is about connecting typically old, stuck, maladaptive information into right now existing adaptive information. And that's part of what makes EMDR difficult when we're first starting with a really complex client, is that if you have an enormously healthy client, they have mountains of adaptive information for the difficult stuff to link up with. If you have a client with severely complex trauma, the client may have grown up and may not have had any experiences that really challenge that helplessness and collapse and blame and shame and responsibility that they developed in childhood. So one of the things that we know about what complex trauma is, and the way I now think about what complex trauma is it's not about all the stuff that you've been through. It's about how much adaptive information you have or do not have. This is what's amazing about flash. It does not need to connect to adaptive information. You can process astonishingly large memories. Really, I mean, I've worked in the first few sessions with the sometimes the worst, the second worst, the third worst memories clients have ever had in their whole life. And with complex trauma, that's some really, really bad stuff. It does not connect, does not need to connect with right now adaptive information. It doesn't. So the thing that takes a while for us to prepare clients to do, in some ways to get them healthy enough to tolerate, build enough adaptive information for the difficult stuff to start to link up with, we don't have to do that with Flash. You can truly believe that you are the most horrible person in the universe. You can truly believe that everything that ever happened to you is your fault. And if you follow, and the client is healthy enough and able enough to follow this procedure, that memory is very, very, very likely to completely and permanently resolve. And when it resolves, the client will have more adaptive information about themselves in the world, which is what we need to be doing anyway as a part of phase 2. Okay? A lot of what we're doing in phase 2 isn't just showing clients resources. We are building the information. We're building the landing place that the difficult memories are going to need to join with, join to and connect with. And if you hear that what I'm implying is that Flash is incredibly reliable, Flash-like approaches done well are incredibly reliable, you're hearing me right. And I'm using words that 6-8 months ago, I would have said were not trauma-centered. They were not trauma-focused. They were not trauma-compatible. I use words in describing Flash-like approaches that would have been very objectionable to me before. Words like safe, reliable, predictable, easy, fast. These are the words that I use to describe this approach to trauma resolution. EMDR can be many of those things. Flash is the best approach I can imagine in working with clients with complex trauma in this part of the process while we're preparing them for all the difficulties and rigors and the digesting and the noticing and connecting and allowing things to go where they need to go. Flash is amazing because it lets us clean the kitchen, right? EMDR is going to let us do a really deep, we're going to get under the canisters, we're going to get out a mop. What Flash is going to do is it's going to let us get the dirty dishes, put them in the dishwasher. It's going to let us wipe down the cabinets. It's going to let us deal with the catastrophe and the mess while we're preparing for the deeper cleaning. So Flash is, I've been saying this lately, and again, if it's okay. It's okay if you don't believe me. Flash is the closest thing we have to a combination lock to unlock trauma. It takes a little bit of time to get that combination lock down, but once you've got it, it's pretty darn predictable, right? 3 rounds to the right, 2 rounds to the left, 1 round right back to that last number, pop, it will unlock. So again, how do I use it? How do I use Flash? I use Flash with my clients who are somatically disconnected while I'm working to help them get into their bodies. If they're not in their bodies at all, Flash will still work. Flash-like approaches will still work. So while we're developing embodiment, we can still process trauma. And the trauma that we process is going to be the trauma that's most contributing to the current instability. So whatever it is that's been coming up lately, those are the memories that we're targeting. Whatever the flashbacks have been, those are the memories that we're targeting. We're resolving them again as soon as the second session. And my clients are getting better faster because we're targeting the fuel that is most contributing to the current fire. Clients who have abreactive shutdown responses, particularly if you're working on an attachment wound, clients are able to do and resolve attachment targets without much of a risk of that shutdown response. Clients who have strong abreactive responses, abreactive vomiting, any kind of thing that the client may be terrified of, they do incredibly well with Flash. I have plenty of clients with identified parts who simply will not consent. I mean, I've had clients whose parts simply will say, I'm not doing EMDR. And it's, and some parts will express it's not that I'm worried about me, I'm worried about this other part. I'm worried about this other part, not being able to handle the distress of this journey. So my clients with really severe dissociated processes do really well with Flash. They like Flash, and it allows us, again, it gives us important stuff to do while we're preparing, while we're going on this EMDR phase 2 preparation journey, which with clients with complex trauma is not going to be a short journey anyway. So we process whatever it is that's contributing to the current instability. Also, if we, with clients with complex trauma, they're the clients that are going to most need check-ins because difficult stuff is happening between sessions. We may use a fair chunk of a session doing a check-in. And if we're working in the standard clinical hour and we only have 25 minutes left to go, that's not really time to work on a memory with EMDR. It's plenty of time to work on a memory with Flash, if not 2 memories with Flash. So I also might use Flash-like approaches to close a memory that didn't close in EMDR. If for some reason, we intuit that this memory, it's stuck, and it's stuck in ways that aren't responding well to interweaves. One of the most sensible things I can think to do in the last 20 minutes of a session is to close and resolve that memory with Flash. And then after we do that, that memory will behave exactly the same way as it would have behaved if we would have been able to close that memory inside EMDR. So I find that clients, I know that there's some, some people are like, oh my gosh, we're using Flash because we're afraid of using EMDR. And I just want to present a little counter argument. I think some of my clients are maybe doing better EMDR because they know if we need to, we have another means of closing it. So I think my clients and myself, and I think many of us are we're more easily able to tolerate the stress if we know we have reliable, predictable ways of ending the pain. So Flash-like approaches are a very good plan B. And I know early on, the therapist who developed it said, well, you can always, use EMDR to close whatever doesn't close in Flash. I'm 100 times more likely to use Flash to close something that doesn't close in EMDR than I am vice versa. So another way that I use Flash, and again, I would have been enraged if someone would have said this. 6 months ago, because this may be the only therapy that I can think of that we can do this. We can encourage clients to do this safely. Once a client's done a few sessions, I help them sketch out the process. I explain what this is. I explain how they can do this when they have flashbacks between sessions, not just as a resource, but how they can use this to resolve those memories on their own between sessions. So again, I am a cautious therapist. I had to kind of work my way there because the idea of a therapy that clients could do between sessions to resolve their own traumas sounds incredibly, incredibly dangerous. What if something goes wrong? Remember, though, that the way Flash is different is that it's built around two resources that clients need to already be using if they're having a flashback. They need to already be trying to container it, right? They need to already be trying to move against the impulse that's inside it. And calm place, or noticing something in your current environment that's different than that really bad memory, is a really good approach, and it may be something that they really need to be doing anyway. So even if they don't do Flash perfectly, which my clients are doing really well with it between sessions, they are able to process. If a terrible memory comes and it's intruding in their present, I will encourage them to do Flash on it themselves. They have the tools that they need to do that. And my clients are coming back telling me that it was helpful. It worked. It resolved whatever that thing was. To be clear, I'm not telling them that because you have 30 minutes on a Thursday, reach in your trauma container, find something terrible to work on and do that. That's not what I'm encouraging them to do. But as a form of self-efficacy, right? This should be incredibly exciting news. Clients have been trying to process their own traumas. Humans have been trying to process their own traumas ever since we've had this brain. And right now, there are ways that they can do that reliably, predictably, safely, and very, very rapidly. So this is only good news. This is only good news. And I hear grumblings sometimes from other therapists that, well, it sounds like what you're saying is that we only need Flash. You know, if this is so amazing, this is so wonderful, why don't we just, only use Flash all the time? I hear that criticism, but again, my response is, this is only good, right? Think about if we wanted to give a training on resourcing, almost everyone listening to this podcast could develop a months-long 24/7 training on resourcing and never cover the same resource twice. If we were going to spend 5 minutes talking about each psychotherapy that could completely, rapidly, safely process trauma, and it's safe enough to let clients engage in this on their own at home when they're triggered, how long would that training be, right? How long would that training be in which clients would be able to completely and totally reprocess trauma either in session or on their own between session? I can't imagine that would be more than a 15-minute training. So this is only good. The world needs EMDR. The world needs EMDR badly. You're going to have a hard time finding a bigger advocate for EMDR than I am. I believe this. I believe EMDR will change the world. I believe that Flash will make us better EMDR therapists because it's going to make us more effective healers because we're going to have more tools in our toolbox. And what in the world is wrong with more tools in our toolbox? So I don't have a lot of compassion, or I don't have a lot of empathy for, this isn't my preferred way of healing in a world that is dying, absolutely dying in front of us. So if you're a trauma therapist and you believe that what is wrong with us is what we carry, and I'm telling you, as someone who went into this skeptically, who is not easily impressed, is not easily astonished, that this is an astonishing approach to healing, and it will let you be very, very likely, if you get it, if it resonates with you, it will let you be a much more effective EMDR therapist with your most profoundly traumatized clients. So, um, so that's where that's where I am. And thank you for going with me on this journey. I know that this may sound a little bit bizarre. I feel almost like when I describe this approach, for me, it's so transformative. I almost feel a little bit evangelical, like like I have good news that needs to spread around the world. And I really do believe this will. This is the therapy that can go global while we're continuing to train other deeper cleans to go global. This is a therapy that can be done in parts of the world where there's not a person with a master's degree for 200 miles. This is a therapy that we're going to need to train crisis intervention people who answer the phone call to do. This is the therapy that we're going to need to train case managers to do. This is the therapy that I do when a client comes to session already outside of their effective window of tolerance. When a client comes to session completely outside of their window of tolerance, we can do flash on whatever just knocked them out of their window of tolerance. And they will leave session having done some healing. And what in the world is wrong with that? There is plenty time in any session while we're preparing clients to do some mindfulness skills, to do some embodiment training. There is time to do A, B, and C. So I'm advocating for a bacon and eggs approach, not a bacon or eggs approach, not a, the eggs are stinking up my bacon approach. It's, they are both good in and of themselves, and they're better together. So thank you. Thanks for joining. Be in touch. I'm gonna keep talking about this. It's what I think EMDR therapists probably most need right now developmentally. Once you have the EMDR basics down with your most severely traumatized clients. So thank you.